Hey everybody, how's it going?
Hey, folks, says what? I can't believe it. We're in the Wall Street Journal, guys. For real.
Yep.
Like Phuc Labs, we were in a feature in the Wall Street Journal. I haven't read it yet. So this episode would be a reaction episode where I'm going to literally read the article for the first time ever. But I want to give you guys some background of what happened this last week. And Roberto doesn't even know what
Yeah,
happened because I barely know. I barely
no,
know
because
what happened.
you sent me the link and then that was it. Like I didn't even get a chance to read it.
Yeah, so I barely know what happened. So myself. So what happened was, Christopher Mims, Mims, is a journalist at the Wall Street Journal. And as you may know or may not know, the Wall Street Journal is actually a very premier publication in the United States. It's actually very, very well known. And when you get in the Wall Street Journal, you also get journalists to pay attention to you. So it's kind of like the beginning of a big rush of media, hopefully. Because the idea is we're going through a Republic campaign where we're basically Phuc Labs, and we're basically, this podcast is about me and Roberto going and doing startups. Sorry for the camera issues. Let me get this camera stable.
It's like, what are you doing?
I'm sorry. All right, let's do this again. So the camera
No, it's fine.
is
Keep
all
going.
stable
Yep.
because I just want to make sure the microphone had good sound. Okay. But anyway, this is a brand new podcast that we've been doing for the last 9 months, I think, 10 months, following the journey of basically the startup. And we started with zero. I had an idea in July. We built a prototype around October. We had the first version, and that was 2020. And now the date is July 25th, 2022, which is roughly what, like 18 months later, something like that?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, we started the podcast around like September.
Yeah.
You can check.
So we basically, I had this idea, and then basically we grew it, and now we have 8 people working for us full time. We are about to go to Republic to fundraise for $1 million to get to the next level. We've already fundraised $1 million plus already from existing investors. And with that very little amount of money, we perfected our technology with Phuc Labs. We're the first company to ever digitally use a computer to sort particles out of water. So in other words, we are using AI to vacuum things out of water. So for example,
That's crazy.
if you see something that you like, for example, gold or copper or aluminum, because you're recycling
People like
a
gold.
battery or some e-waste, which is a lot of stuff, right? And I actually just heard that one of the biggest issues would be recycling solar panels. And I didn't know how big of an issue it was, but apparently a lot of people have been telling me that solar panels are about to actually go out of commission, and there's so many of them going out of commission that they need to be recycled.
That's crazy. It's funny because like it's a byproduct never even thought about.
Yeah.
You just think about solar panels as this like immortal thing,
Well,
and it's not.
think about it, guys. Before oil and gas, what do you think we use, Roberto?
Wind,
Wind?
heat.
No, no, no.
Heat, like out of
What do
combustion.
we use for fuel, for real?
Wind. Actually, I feel like that's all the sailing happened and most of the movement.
No,
Animals.
whales, dude. We killed whales.
Whales? Oh man, yeah, for all the fat.
Yeah, Moby Dick. Remember the movie Moby Dick? Or the
Yes.
book Moby Dick, whatever you
book?
want to. You know, remember what generation you came from, right? You either read it or you watched it. But Moby Dick was about whaling. Why do you think people went and hunted whales? Do we hunt whales anymore?
No.
Well, why do we
It's
hunt
not
whales
frowned
before?
upon. True. Like I never really thought about it, but it is. Yeah, like, yeah, for all the fat and all the oil.
How
they
much? How long ago was that?
have 100 years?
Not that much long, right? Before
No, no,
whales,
no.
what was the thing before whales?
No idea what happened before whales.
Maybe like, I don't know, cow fat, wax from bees, right?
Yeah, because I feel like if anything before whales had to be like way smaller because we weren't organized enough to actually take down something that big.
So before chemicals, we then had wood, right? So
Yep.
before whale blubber, before candles, before things that humans made that were kind of like these kind of gooey, chemically kind of compounds that weren't so easy to figure out, we were primitive and we had wood.
Which was just kind of everywhere, anyways. And it's not like it fights back. So
So we also were primitive, and we had people would go ahead and manually maybe like use a membrane and take this
okay,
membrane, and this membrane would have a certain size and pore, and then because it had a certain size and pore or certain like maybe kind of like property where it would have electrolysis or some type of matter and energy, you can then filter things out of water. So that was before we came along, before Phuc Labs came along. And in Phuc Labs, this T-shirt, which is just down the street at UMass Boston, I'm actually writing the software where we can see this particle. Okay, so imagine that you have this conveyor belt, and the conveyor belt has these packages. And imagine that you see this package moving along like my hand right here, and this package moves along, and then at some point we say, well, this package needs to go to the East Coast. So let's go up here to the East Coast. And this other package needs to go to the West Coast. Let's go down here. So you have these, these little things that would split the conveyor belt and route the package. Right? Does that make sense?
yep. Yes, it does. Especially, I feel like everybody right now understands a lot the process of packaging and delivering. Thank you, Amazon.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, I know people realize that's actually magic. Because the third force of nature is information. So let's take a step back, okay? So what we're talking about here isn't just an invention. It's a physics experiment. It's a physics experiment where someone had an idea. James Clerk Maxwell, one of the greatest physicists of all time. So on my wall, right, on my bedroom, I have a picture of guess who?
Einstein
Einstein.
and Maxwell.
Okay. And you know who Einstein had a picture of in his bedroom?
No.
James Maxwell. So James Clerk Maxwell was, you know how like gangster rap, there's the OG? Remember OG back then? There was like, who were the OG rappers back then?
Man, back in the, who knows? Honestly, like I haven't ever been very big on hip hop, but I know Biggie and Tupac.
So Biggie, you know Biggie, right? So Biggie
Yep.
is like James Clerk Maxwell, right?
Okay.
So he said, look, I wrote Maxwell's equations. And do you even know what Maxwell's equations is, man?
No, I just know like the principle.
Okay. So Maxwell's
the actual
equations
equation,
is
like the actual,
this is how fucking cool it is. This is how amazing. I have to swear because how cool it is. I'm so excited just to tell you because I'm geeking out right now. You know what Maxwell's equations is?
No.
He just took everyone else's work
Okay.
and he put it all into one easy to understand equation or a series of
But
equations.
at this point, I mean, like, who's everyone else?
Faraday, right? Faraday was inventing magnetism, essentially, understanding electricity and all that stuff, right? Then there were the laws
Okay.
of Newton. Then the laws of basically the fundamental forces of nature. What you have to understand is everyone didn't understand it, but everything is a wave. Okay? Everything is a wave, meaning energy. Everything in the universe. Before Maxwell came along, you would think, hey, yo, I'm going to shoot a gun. I'm going to shoot a particle. It's a line. It's a line. It's a particle,
Okay.
right? It's a particle. It goes from A to B. And the thing is, everyone figured out, holy crap, nothing ever goes from A to B. Everything kind of rolls. Everything, like when you, like, let's say you go bowling, right? When you bowl a
Okay.
ball, does it go from A to B? Yeah, it goes from A to B, but along the way, it turns in a circle.
Yep. Yeah.
So it oscillates like a wave. Things have to spin. Things have to turn
Yeah.
to go from A to B. Right?
Yes.
And guess what? Things don't turn exactly the right way. Things turn on different planes of existence, and they actually counteract each other. And it's called the electromagnetic process, right? So you have light.
Okay.
Light is like, there'll be a wave going this way, up and down. And there'll be another wave going left and right. It'll oscillate between two types of energy, helping each other move forward. So it's like left foot, right foot. Left foot, right foot. Right? Magnetism,
Okay.
electricity. Magnetism, electricity, light. So basically, light itself was a combination of two things stepping together. And it's all the same thing. It's all Maxwell's equations. It's one equation that represents everything in the universe. And all he did was consolidate and said, you know what? Everything's the same. It's just one thing. Because the science, if you think about science, right? The genius of the best scientists, and I think, you know, I've been practicing for a while. I understand it now. If it can't fit in your head, if it's not that simple, it's wrong.
Okay. Like if you have to justify the answer, or like
No. It's because you have to know that the universe follows evolution.
okay.
Now think about evolution. What does evolution say about anything in the universe? It gets better. What does better mean? Tell me what better means.
Well, better is like you adapted from a previous state in order to survive whatever situation you're in right now.
So you need less things to survive. You need less work. For example, we don't farm anymore. We don't spend a lot of time farming or carrying water for our baths, and we don't have to heat up the water, and we don't have to spend a lot of useless time. We can work on higher end things because we create automation. Right? So the universe, what it wants to do, it wants to find an equilibrium. It wants to find something where it's a steady state with the least amount of work.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, it's just like more efficient work.
Well, for example,
Like that way. Like,
let's say I can do something. I can play, let's say, tennis. And I can take a huge swing. And I'm a really beginner tennis player or even golf player or whatever analogy you want to make. And I'll be super inefficient with my golf swing or my football throw
Okay.
or whatever you want, baseball throw. And it'll look wild. I spend a lot of energy and it goes nowhere. It goes in the dirt,
Yep.
right? Or I could be super efficient, super smooth, and I'll be the Cy Young winner throwing the fastest football pitch. Because I learned the efficiency of what a pitch is really purely about. A pitch is purely about two angles,
Yeah.
two things, three things, a combination of four things that make a perfect pitch. But it's just four things. And usually people do 1,000 things, and that's why it's not very good, because it's supposed to be just four things. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. You're just being more efficient with your movement. Okay, makes sense.
But that's also how you live life, man. Most people complicate things. They say, hey, if this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, if I complicate my life further, I will achieve clarity. And I will achieve perfection. And I'll get closer to what the truth is. But what I just explained with this universe doesn't like that. The universe says, hey, give me the two things, the minimum, because I don't got time for you, man. I got other shit to do. You're not that important. This issue is one of many issues in the universe. So give me the minimum information, and I'll get you to the answer as fast as you can. What do you want? You want a fast answer, or you want bullshitting around? And most people say, yo, you know what? Sorry for the small talk. Go ahead and do your thing, universe. I want the fastest thing.
Yeah.
And that's what physics is about. That's what science is about. That's what life is about, man. If you think like, oh, it's going to take 15 steps for me to achieve clarity,
Yeah.
there's something wrong with your clarity. That's not very clear, is it?
No, it's like, no. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, sometimes I do understand that, like, the simplest answer might be the right one, but I feel that there's many steps for you to get to the point where you can identify that there shouldn't be this many steps.
So that's, I'm going to give you the secret, guys. So this show is about how genius is everywhere. I believe it's evenly distributed through humanity, through the universe, but opportunity is not. So I hope to inspire people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the secret to the meaning of life and to everything is to be authentic.
Oh, yeah.
Right? What does authentic mean? It means you know what free will is. So what is free will? Free will is when you decide between A and B, and you decide the optimum path to everything in your life. So I was having lunch with my friend just now, like literally like an hour or two ago. And
Okay.
I said, the only thing you have is you have two things, Roberto. You have the ability to focus on something, like me. And everything in the universe will become a little bit fuzzier. Do you notice that?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's a phenomenon your brain does, though.
Why do you think that is?
So you shut out all the noise.
Or, in my theory, you are a representation of the universe's computer. Okay? And here's how I prove it. If you look at an electron, it will go left or right, according to quantum physics. So if there's an observer for a photon or electron or something, and there's a tie in the universe, meaning there's a probability of A or B. In other words, if there's a forest, does the tree fall if no one is there? And in quantum physics, it can fall and not fall. It could be both. It's a probability. So it hasn't been computed yet. Does that make sense? So the entire universe is like a chessboard. Okay? The chessboard are probabilities of you when you play a video game. So when you play a video game, let's say Legend of Zelda or Fortnite or chess or something like that, you know that roughly over there's a random chance of adventure. Why would you go over there unless there was adventure? You want to have fun. There's a chance of A or B. It hasn't been reality yet. Now, when you write a computer game, and I get to, let's say, level 5. Let's say I go to this teleportation, I don't know, some game, and there's a teleportation thing in front of me. I step to the teleportation thing. It randomly brings me to a level. Okay? what happens there is this randomness introduced. And I'm teleported somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, like, is it very random though? I mean, like, because usually when you in a video game, like the same content,
But that,
if you encounter,
yeah, that's somewhere
it takes you to
else.
the next level though.
That's
Yeah.
somewhere else. Once you arrive there, is that forest. That forest where the tree may or may not have fallen, but because I have to write a program to create the real level, not just a possible forest. So in computer science, it's called a class. Okay. So a class is a idea, a possibility. Like a human is a class, but you're what's called an instance, and I am an instance. Just like Dungeons and Dragons, a dwarf is a class, and then John the dwarf is that dwarf is an instance of that dwarf, and Mary the dwarf is an instance of another dwarf, and then Sean the dwarf is another dwarf. And instances are basically people or souls, right? Or variables
Okay.
that are actually real. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. And the way I explained it to my friend was actually very simple. Do you believe 3 is a real number?
3?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I can cut 3 pizzas, like 1, 2, 3 pizza slices, right? I have 3 kids, so
Yeah.
obviously my 3 kids are real. I think I have 3
Or the
fingers
amount of-
at least in front of me. Maybe 3 in
Yeah.
each hand, so 6 fingers. But what's the square root of 3?
1.33333.
So the square root of 3 is an irrational number that goes on forever through infinity. It's not real.
1.6. It's real. It's what's the other one? When it's the
So
square
it's
root of a negative number.
irrational, but it's real, but it's not imaginary. So imaginary is I,
Imaginary.
where it's not even a real number. It's just some random figment of a number.
Yep.
Okay, so I know what you're talking about, imaginary numbers. But the thing about imaginary numbers is the invent of the imaginary number was one of the most greatest inventions, and the event of the irrational number was the greatest inventions. Because guess what happened when you multiply an irrational number by itself? What do you think the irrational number becomes?
It becomes a real number.
Correct. So that's how ghosts were invented.
Okay.
Oh, your soul. So your soul is an irrational number. It's infinity. It never dies. But it's not real. It's not manifest. It becomes manifest when it has a body, which is a copy of the soul in a 3D world. When you gaze upon yourself, when one gazes upon itself, one has the capability to multiply and become 2. How does that sound? But not only do you become 2, but you might become real. Because when you multiply yourself and you're rational or imaginary, I don't know what happens to 2 imaginary numbers that multiply each other. I don't know. Did they become real? Maybe. They're imaginary. I don't know. But with the imaginary number, they can cancel out. Imaginary number 1 minus imaginary number 2 is 0. So they cancel out. So the imaginary number is different. It solves a different problem. It solves a problem where you have an imaginary thing you can't solve. But if you figure out the same imaginary thing over here, and that thing's also complicated, 2 complicated things can then become less complicated because the imaginary things cancel each other out. And the only thing left you have is a simple thing.
Yeah, but like, how does that apply to the instance or the individual?
So the imaginary number has a different use than the irrational number. The irrational number gives you the ability to have a class, like a dwarf. And then you have an instance when the dwarf is real, when it actually makes a copy of itself. Does that make sense?
Kind of. How does it make a copy of itself?
When you look at yourself, you see yourself in the mirror. When you look at yourself in the mirror, you copy yourself through information.
Okay, but like, let's say right now,
Through
like I'm looking at myself on the
through
screen.
information.
Okay.
Information is a third force of nature. So I have matter, I have energy, and then I have a mirror. The mirror is made of matter, and of energy. But when I look in that specific, very specific orientation of matter and energy, I see information. That information reflects me, and I can copy myself. And that's how you can unlock information, through the use of matter and energy to create information. And then once you have information, you can then create matter and energy back. Because you become real.
But it's temporary, no?
No, you become
but like,
real.
like
So that's how magic works, man. It's infinity. Thought becomes matter and energy. Matter and energy becomes thought. And it goes back and forth forever through infinity. It's basically how the universe keeps expanding. Think about it, Roberto, right? I have a cup. It has a cup worth of water. The universe is that cup, right? The cup keeps expanding and expanding and getting bigger and bigger. Now the cup is the size of a gallon and the size of a football field, the size of this planet. But what happened to the water inside?
hasn't changed.
But what's the water inside is the information,
Yeah.
the space, us, the worms, the timelines, creating words, arts on the paper. Because when the Big Bang happened, it was just blank white space, like your background right there, and you're drawing your figure on that white background in your screen right now, and you're creating the water in the universe, and you're filling it up with randomness and with basically new matter and energy, because your information creates matter, creates energy. Because what's potential energy? Do you know what potential energy is?
Yes, I used to. Wait, potential energy is the energy of what could be.
Potential energy is a program ready to run. So that's the second thing you can do. So let me go back to what I started this conversation. You represent the universe because you are a timeline. You never die. You reincarnate forever. You create information. You're like a worm just drawing on the universe forever. You reincarnate to bigger and bigger worms to draw more and more complicated art and make it cooler and all that shit. You start as an atom. Then you become a worm. Then you become a rabbit. Then you become a dog. Then you become a human. Then you become an angel. Then you become a god. And you become a whatever, the Eternals, like in the Marvel comics.
Yes.
And that's part of the assimilation. The training.
Okay.
Star Trek.
But this is assuming there's always progress, though. I mean, like when
the way you think about it is like you have shamans.
Okay.
You have Stan Lee. You have people who are creatives who use their imagination. Okay. These people tell us, like Shakespeare, right? Shakespeare uses his imagination. He writes a really cool story. Talks about human nature, so that humans can evolve. Okay, technology, art, all of this is leading to the same outcome. What do you think that outcome is?
Well, I feel like it's all for bettering all of us.
Yes. So let's say you start as a worm. You become a dog. You become a fish. You become a human. You become an angel. And I think that's what's happening to humanity right now. I think we're getting to the age
we're evolving,
where we're gonna basically become heaven on earth, because technology gives us the power of the gods. Because we're using the power of the gods without actually understanding we are gods already today.
You think we're getting to the threshold here right now, like in our history?
No, we are gods today, period.
Okay.
Here's my thought. We are literally creating life forms in the form of AI, possibly, or in the form of bio experiments, in terms of xenobots, with Michael Levin's experiments at Tufts, where Michael Levin at Tufts, he's going to win the Nobel Prize. He's proven what other scientists like David Sinclair and other scientists who have figured out the human body is like a computer. We're like a computer, and with voltage, we can shock organs into existence. And Michael Levin, look up his TED Talk, has shocked eyeballs, legs, body parts into a frog. And basically,
What?
what that proves,
How?
yeah, and basically what that proves is the body has programs you can run. You can run a program for the
Okay.
eyeball. And not only do you run the program for the eyeball, but when the eyeball creates itself, the voltage of every cell in the eyeball has the same voltage. Okay? And this is my theory of why that's the case. Okay? The way you can think about your body is you have this DNA. Your DNA is like your hard drive. Okay. Now, when you have a hard drive in your iPhone and your computer, what app did you run last, Roberto?
My last app?
Yeah, that you opened
Probably
last.
Instagram. Like probably Instagram.
Instagram, or
Chilling.
maybe this app to open the video. Okay? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
So what you did was
Just
you
like
went to your
user
computer
AI.
and you typed something. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And that became an input that became a bunch of zeros and ones. And the zeros and ones
Yeah.
ran a program that then ran a program that ran a program that did this and this, this and this. And it started basically you release potential energy. You ran a program. It was a program ready to run and you ran it. The app was a program ready to run, you ran it.
Yep.
That's not hard to understand, right?
That's it. No, that's it.
So that's what you did. And that's what all life is. When you gaze upon something in the world, you focus on it, you're computing that area of space. The electron is moving left or right because you're using your random number generator. You're rolling the dice and creating reality. And that's my resolution of reality theory, right? Where you are the CPU for the universe. Without us, the worms, that part of space cannot be drawn on. Nothing happens, right? It just happens the way it's supposed to happen. Something goes in a circle forever. But if someone gets in the way, the circle stops. Maybe it crashes into you and you stop that circle. That's the idea. Does that make sense? So nothing
it
happens
does.
in the forest. The tree falls, and no one gives a shit because no one computed it.
But it still happened though.
No, there's no CPU. That file on your hard drive, you know how many apps you have on your iPhone you never opened?
No, there must be tons of it. I don't have an iPhone for the record. I'm a
Oh, maybe on
Samsung
your
guy.
computer, right? There's a lot of programs on your computer you haven't opened yet. Just like your DNA.
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
a lot of things in your
Yeah.
DNA you haven't opened yet. And that's why I'm trying to mix the two, guys. It's the same thing. The universe is basically based on a bunch of magic spells. You cast this magic spell, and something happens at the end. So the magic spell is a thought sometimes. Right? So in Harry Potter would say abracadabra, or someone would say abracadabra. Sometimes they use a verbal term, or they use some type of thought. So you ever see those shows where wizards would fight each other? Magicians and
Yeah.
all that stuff. So how do you think they fight? They fight using thought or some type of
the better
verbal
ones.
chant, right? Or spell.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, it does.
Now all that becomes a bunch of zeros and
Within.
ones.
Okay.
It becomes a voltage. Because a bunch of zeros and ones is like a frequency. It's like a radio wave. If you look at a radio wave, it's a bunch of valleys and peaks. It's a bunch of waves, zeros and ones. And guess what electricity is? A voltage is. A bunch of zeros and ones.
There's like
A bunch of, maybe more, maybe it's, amplitude, all that stuff. But basically, everything in the universe, in terms of inputs, becomes math. Because a single number. Now, that number can be represented through chemistry, through your DNA. The way your double helix is
Yeah.
formed It could also be represented in electricity. It can be represented in the file on your computer. All of it is just information, types of information, and how to store the information. Does that make sense?
It does, actually. Within the realm of what we're talking about, it does.
So if I record the voltage from that heart that Michael Levin has recorded the voltage on, and I take that voltage and I zap that voltage in some other part, what do you think happens to that other part?
It transforms into a heart if you change it?
That's what he did. He took the voltage of an eyeball of a frog. He zapped that area where the eyeball doesn't need to exist. It became an eyeball.
There was nothing there?
No, it was not. It was a liver. The eyeball grew where the liver was supposed to grow. And he grew arms where arms were not supposed to grow. There
On
were
a
two
frog.
arms right here. He threw 3 arms
Yeah.
below the armpit of the left arm. He threw 5 arms.
Man.
There's a worm that has 1 head. He zapped a second head into existence. You can see the worm squirming around, and it's actually under the microscope. You can see that worm.
Man, as soon as we're done here, I'm going to go watch that TED Talk.
But here's what I'm telling you, right? What if you take that and you zap it with nothing? What do you think happens to it? That little thing that could become
Can you
anything.
zap it, like... But can you zap it with nothing?
Yeah,
I feel
so
that
that's
the
what he said.
zapping
He said,
already...
let me try this. Let me zap it with an eyeball. Yo, yeah, it became an eyeball. Let me zap it with an arm. Okay, that worked. Let me just leave it and take all the voltage out. What do you think happened to it?
Okay, I thought like the action of zapping already involves information.
He didn't zap it. He basically, I think he used a
He
Yamanaka
decharged
factors.
it? Like,
You know what the
Okay.
Yamanaka factors are?
no, first time I hear it.
Okay. So the Yamanaka factors, he won a Nobel Prize, believe because of the 2010, 2012 research. The Yamanaka factors is this Japanese scientist who figured out a way to take adult cells
Okay.
and turn them back into stem cells.
Like revert the time process?
Correct. So it's called the Yamanaka factors. Now, there's a lot of pharma companies trying to basically do this research to use the Yamanaka factors to reverse aging. And like a couple months ago, a PhD student took the Yamanaka factors. So the Yamanaka factors was like 5 or 6 basically ingredients over the course of 23 days, where you put into a petri dish all these chemicals, 5 of them, right?
Okay.
And you wait 23 days to bring it back to the stem cell. Now, what happens when you don't bring it back to the stem cell? You do, let's say, 13 days. Well, it de-ages the cell a certain number of years. So they took a human female, the age of 50-something, left that skin cell in a petri dish with the Yamanaka factors for 13 days or so, and that skin cell became 20-something.
Damn.
Now, there's worries about cancer and all these issues. Obviously, it's the first time you did anything, so you got to be really careful about doing this. But literally, that means I can take your heart, your eyeball,
Yep.
I can put it in a petri dish, I can do the Yamanaka factors, and I can make it grow younger again. I can put it back. But
That's amazing.
even better, I can just measure the voltage of your organ, take one of your cells, use the Yamanaka factors to make it to a stem cell, record the voltage from your heart, zap that with the same voltage, and it'll grow your heart
make a new one.
in a petri dish, and you put your heart back in. And that's your own heart expressed, because what happened was the voltage is just a number. It's just a mathematical number, an input that tells basically your body, your DNA, which is your hard drive, which is in every cell,
Yeah.
to express or essentially open these files. Open the heart file, please, and run it. Open the ear file, please, and run it. Open the eyeball file and run it. Open the whatever and run it. And the voltages are basically a copy of how you can run that program again. It's that simple, man. You record the voltage,
It's crazy though.
you zap it here, and it becomes the same thing.
But what happened when they took away the voltage?
So what happens is, first of all, he took the heart, and he noticed that all the cells in the hearts had the same voltage. But then when the heart or whatever, liver or whatever the cell became cancerous, the voltage changed to a different voltage. Okay?
Oh, like a corrupted
So
voltage.
now you have a cancer detector. Okay. Let's say, so that's number one. So you know that voltage is definitely
Yeah.
related to what we just talked about. So your heart is an instance of an object from your DNA, and the voltage not only tells it what it should be, but tells it what part it should be. And so maybe within the heart, some of the voltage talks to each other. And also the voltage, and the thing that's really, really interesting, is your heart talks to each other like your brain would. The cells in your heart are like neurons. The cells in your
Okay.
liver are like neurons. The cells in every organ communicate with each other as would a brain. The neurons in the brain communicate with each other. So there's actually a lot more than you think it is in terms of communication.
That's crazy.
Right? And the voltage
Yeah, like
may
within
change
your
and
same,
oscillate
like within your body.
within some type of
Okay.
oscillation, and maybe within that voltage, you can then detect if your heart is healthy or not in terms of emotionally, your resonance,
Huh.
stuff like that. So I don't know. This is the
Okay.
beginning of a huge science that we have yet to understand. But electricity has been proven under a microscope to basically be the factor. 100%. Your heart has the same voltage.
So
When it becomes cancerous, it's a different voltage. When you take away the voltage, it becomes a xenobot. A xenobot is this cell that just randomly runs around, and what it does, I believe, this is my theory, it collects the frequency of whatever is randomly around it. It becomes that frequency of that thing it's trying to replicate. The soul is trying to replicate. So this xenobot, depending on the environment, would act like the game of life. Have you heard about the game of life?
like the board game?
No. So the game of life is a computer science experiment. Okay?
Okay.
So the rules are very simple. It's like evolution. If you have no
Okay.
neighbors, you can replicate freely. If you
Yes.
have too many neighbors, you might die because you have too many resources. Right? So it's a game of life, very simple rules. It's kind of like, like when you play the game of Go, where you put these dots here. If you put the dots in empty spaces, you have less competition. You can probably put more dots there over time. But if you put it over here, you might win more, but then you also kind of lose more, right? So it's kind of like the game of Go, like with basically the game of life. Does that make sense? And so your whole idea is to reproduce more of yourself. So if you actually have 3 things surrounding something, you eat it, right? Something kind of like that, right?
Okay.
So depending on the environment, the game plays out very differently. But it doesn't play out randomly, dude. It plays out into patterns,
Okay.
okay?
Like a
You should
recognizable
Google this on
pattern, or-
YouTube. But sometimes it looks like sentient life. It looks like there's a dog running around barking. Sometimes it looks like an octopus swimming around. Sometimes it looks like a spaceship just flying with the moon. Because what happens is they put, the game, the board's always the same, but they randomly put different beginning points of where the game would start, and they would start the game randomly. And depending on the variable and the seed variable they do, the randomness they do, the game would change. But then sometimes it goes into these steady states, where it looks like you're looking to a different universe. It becomes a pattern that looks real to you. It just repeats or evolves. It looks like a real life. It looks like a life form. And so the same thing
What are you
happens
looking
to
at,
this cell. This cell would then be flowing down, let's say, a fluid stream downstream because the fluid's going downstream, and it changes his mind. He's like, I'm going to go up here and explore there for a while. It would do that. Sometimes they run in circles, right? Like they're just crazy. Sometimes they swim around, explore, stop, swim around, stop, explore. Sometimes they congregate into groups. And in one picture, it looked like it was like a seahorse eating some freaking coral. It was insane. But it was sentient life as if we were gods creating this cell, and it became its own little small universe. That's what I'm trying to tell you. We already gods today.
Well, I feel like that's the issue. Remember you watched The Incredibles?
Yeah, of course, the kids.
At some point, Syndrome does say something interesting that makes it so that maybe this applies, that if everybody's a super, then nobody is. So that if we're all gods already, then
That's not true.
we don't really notice it.
So here's the
Is
deal.
it?
Okay. So here's my theory. I'm going to write a book about this. I'm going to have a series. So this is my resolution of reality theory. Okay. You have an existence based on size, based on math, based on knowledge, and also based on spirituality.
Okay.
So let's say you're an atom. You don't care about spirituality. So your resolution of spirituality is 0. Okay? Let's say you're a bunch of bees. Your spirituality, maybe you're the queen, a little bit religious, I don't know, maybe 0.01. Let's say you're the Catholic Church. Okay? You might be like, let's say 1. But let's say you're a bunch of aliens and you find out that God is real, then you're like 1 billion. Okay? So everything in the universe has 4 levels. How well it controls its body, its reincarnation, its mind, which is number 2, its emotions, and its spirituality. And then we basically send up the universe in terms of that stack. Does that make sense? So it's an information theory. So the universe has matter, has energy, and then it has information. And let me go back to what we talked about earlier. Let's say, again, you're with that cup, the universe is the cup is ever expanding. The water must also expand. So the water must make, some of the water gets more complicated, and those are the elders. Those are the Eternals. So the Eternals in the comic book, Marvel, they're the gatekeepers of the universe, and they take care of the galaxy and the universe. And those are basically super gods. Does that make sense? And then...
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't see exactly why the water should if the cup is expanding, they're two individual.
Well, let's say the chessboard.
Like things.
Let's say the chessboard grows.
Yeah.
Do the chess pieces have to grow with it?
No.
Then the universe is empty. But the universe doesn't look empty, does it?
Well, that's the thing. No, like not as far as I know.
The,
But I mean, like,
the universe looks it looks infinite. So one of two things happened. The chess pieces kept growing beyond where they were supposed to play. If so, they must have made moves. They must have added information.
Or exactly. Or maybe the chess pieces can actually move different ways.
They must have computed each move, like you did. You compute where you're going to go. So again, you go and compute where you focus on. You computed that new area of space, right? And you go to untie, because randomly you can go left or right. So not only can you compute as a brain, you can look at my face as a brain, but you can also decide not to look at my brain. Or not to look at my face, or look at my nose, or look at my... You can do anything you want, but you can change what program to run next. That's all you can do. 2 things as a soul. And those 2 things create free will. Those things, guess what those 2 things are, dude? It's called free will.
And what else?
Free will is the ability to choose between A or B and then see what happens. See what happens is the computation.
Yep.
The choosing
like
is the
consequences
randomness,
of
but it's not random. It's random to the person that you did it to, but to you it's not random. To you, it's something you have to do. It's logical.
Yeah, it just makes sense.
But then to the other
That's why
tennis
you
player,
chose it. No.
It's not logical. It's random because they have no idea to compute everything in your head because they don't have the memory of you. They can never compute your random number generator. They can never see into your soul. So they can never guess what's going to happen. So therefore, they like to play with you because now it's fun. You know what fun is?
Yeah, just like kind of like not knowing.
Yes. So that's why we're talking. That's why we all choose to live on this planet to play this game of life. Where some of us evolve more than others. And some of us get into the Wall Street Journal. So we've been talking for 15 minutes. So I'd like to end the show. So we talked a lot of woo-woo at the beginning. And this time I'm
Yes.
gonna end with something that's more realistic. Okay. So I'm full of shit,
Let's do it.
obviously. And so is Roberto, obviously. But I believe the Wall Street Journal is a pretty good publication.
There you go.
And I
Yeah,
haven't read
prestige.
this yet. This is a reaction video. Because the story is we got a publicist. His name is Justin Brady. He's been doing a fantastic job. And I actually spoke with Justin through RoboFlow. So RoboFlow is a vendor we use for some of the software, like the AI software. They're fantastic. And I know Joseph Nelson there, the CEO. He's a great guy. And Justin was actually the PR person for the RoboFlow guys. And the RoboFlow guys were getting featured by the Wall Street Journal by Christopher Mims maybe 6 months ago. And as a favor, they mentioned us because they had asked RoboFlow what are examples of your clients, and they mentioned like 5-6 clients, and they said, hey, about this one Phuc Labs, they seemed very interesting. So I talked to Christopher Mims a couple months ago, and at that point I thought we were going to be the Wall Street Journal, but it didn't happen. So then we go and we try to do this Republic campaign, and I talked to a bunch of people like, oh, this is great, but be careful because marketing and PR, you really need it, because without this momentum and getting the word out, it's really hard for you to get the $1 million you're trying to raise. So basically, we hired a PR person, and we took a risk to see if we can get this PR, and then we got Christopher Mims interested on Tuesday because he was writing a story on e-waste and maybe the power of AI, just generally AI. I think just AI and maybe some other stuff, how it could be applied to industries, right? And last
Yep.
minute, Justin said, hey, how about Phuc Labs? Like, oh, yeah, but Phuc Labs are great. So Christopher Mims talked to me on like Wednesday, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, we made it to the weekend edition of Wall Street Journal. And not only that, but it's on the app. It got picked up by The Hustle, which is an entrepreneurial magazine, and also syndicated on Apple News and a bunch of other places, #1 on Apple Tech. And so let me read the article. I've never read the article. I haven't read the article yet, but I think that's 8 paragraphs
No, let's
talking
listen.
about us. We're not the main feature, but the fact we even got in this article was just like a happenstance. But then it's going to open the door to other opportunities. But also it proves that our technology is real. And in the lab, I see it every day. I see the particle moving down the tube and going up or down, and I see us, sorting these molecules, and it's super simple, based on the stuff we've invented, because we've been doing it for a while. But to new people, it's like, wow, it's incredible. I've never seen this before. So let me read the article, and I'll end with that. Thank you, Phucsters, for being supportive. I hope you fund our Republic campaign. You can be part of the dream, maybe part of the upside, and at the minimum,
Yeah, right now all you
you
can
gotta
do
have
is
fun,
reserve, basically.
right? It's like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
buy a lottery ticket. It's not as fun as this thing, I'd say.
Yes. You get to hang out with us.
You get to hang out, and let me read the article for you, right? How to build
Is it?
AI that actually works for your business by Christopher Mims, July 23rd, 2022. So this is the article. How to build AI that actually works for your business. The biggest, fanciest, most intelligent seeming artificial intelligence gets all the attention, but tried and true algorithms applied to narrowly defined problems are far more useful today. So that's the caption, okay? So I'll begin the article right now. So artificial intelligence may one day be used to power genuinely human-like cyborgs or other figments of humanity's fertile imagination. For now, Ingo Stewart is using the technology to help restaurant chains waste less food and do more with fewer workers. Dr. Stork is co-founder of Precise Taste, a startup that uses AI-based sensors and algorithms to accomplish to accomplish one fairly specific task: predict how much food people would order at any given moment, and make sure that's being prepared in a timely fashion. The idea to reduce waste came in part from a visit Dr. Stork made to a quick service kitchen one afternoon a few years ago, where he watched a cook fire up 30 burger patties and then throw them all away when no one showed up to eat them. Why, he wondered, should this cook have to follow that day's schedule, written in anticipation of a normal day at the restaurant, instead of the slow one that it turned out to be? Each of those burgers is a 50-mile car ride in terms of CO2 emissions, he says, referring to the energy required to raise the cows and eventually transform them into burgers. Think of all the logistics just to get them there, all just to go to waste and discarded. Using AI tools to reduce waste and increase productivity in fast food joints is hardly the stuff of science fiction. It isn't as flashy as some of the artificial intelligence that have been getting wider attention lately, such as DALL-E, which can create clever images based on text suggestions, or GPT-3 text generation software good enough to write scientific papers about itself. And it's not as likely to make headlines as Google's Lambda chatbot, which can produce human-like conversation that one of the companies engineered declared to be sentient, a notion that the company flatly rejected. But with few exceptions, these headline-grabbing systems aren't having a material impact on anyone's bottom line yet. The AI systems that currently matter the most to companies tend to be far more humble. Were they human, they would probably be wearing hard hats and making cameos on the reality show Dirty Jobs. Okay, so that's basically the first part of the article. I'm guessing that's what he wrote before he came to us, right? And then this is us.
Okay, yeah. Because I mean, like the part for the restaurants is actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool. So that's how he intros. The second half is all us. So basically, the first half I believe is someone else, and then all of us we came at the end. Ruthless simplify. When entrepreneur Phuc Vinh Trong found himself holed up in his Massachusetts home because of COVID-19 lockdowns, he hit on a simple idea. What if you could see contaminants in a stream of liquid and suck them out one by one? That led to Phuc Labs, a startup working on a new way to use AI to recycling electronic waste more efficiently. The system starts with chopped up debris left with recyclers of batteries and other e-waste crushed old electronics. Typically, this waste is processed with a variety of techniques, including chemical separation. Instead, Phuc Labs suspends the particles in water, then channels the resulting slurry through tiny tubes where a camera captures this passage at 100 frames per second. Each frame is analyzed by a computer running a machine vision algorithm that has been trained to tell the difference between the metal particles valuable to recyclers and everything else. When a particle travels to the end of the tube, a tiny, powerful jet of air fires at the stream, directing the slice of water containing the particle into a reservoir. The water is recirculated through the system repeatedly until nearly all the valuable bits of metal have been separated out. Phuc Labs' Vision Valve technology is still in its early stages, but the company is working on a pilot program at IRI, one of the biggest recyclers of e-waste in the Philippines, says IRI President Lee Echeverry. This novel kind of filtration would be impossible without AI, but it's not fancy AI. Machine vision systems are probably the best studied flavor of AI, have been refined for decades. They're used in everything from the face recognition camera in your phone to autonomous driving systems to the missile systems taking out Russian tanks in Ukraine. Mr. Trong's, that's me by the way, team was able to put one of the first versions of the system using an off-the-shelf camera vision system called RoboFlow. That's how we got hooked up, remember? They trained it by manually identifying a few hundred images of particles, drawing boxes around particles, and labeling accordingly, and RoboFlow software did the rest. While AI is a unique enabler of Phuc Labs' filtration system, it works because the system asks so little of the AI as its heart. Just, is this piece metal or not? In essence, his engineers are creating a simple game for the AI to learn, and games like chess and Go are things AI has already proven to be excellent at, says Mr. Trong. I did say that. In many other real-world applications of AI, engineers have found that trying to do less with AI is what ultimately leads to success. A prime example of this autonomous driving systems, which have consistently failed to deliver an on earlier promises of full autonomy, but on finding success in navigating some vehicles in more limited and forgiving environments, such as the ones traversed by trains, ocean-going ships, and long-haul trucks. So basically, blah 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 blah. But holy shit, dude! I don't want to read the rest of it because basically, like, it's like that's basically a third of the article. But that's the Wall Street Journal, and then we got
That's
picked up by
good.
the Hustle, and we're gonna be, in other publications. And once we prove it
To be
actually
everywhere, man.
works, we're gonna be printing money, and we're gonna do some really cool stuff with the money. So I want the audience to help me vote what to do with the money, but I want to take 10% of all our proceeds, and I want to clean up the planet. I want to actually do something with the money instead of donating it to charity. I will actually invent things to do real world activity to fix the problem. So hopefully you guys support
That
the
could be
labs.
awesome.
The Wall
Yeah.
Street Journal, Christopher Mims, thank you for the shout out for a hookup of the last minute story. Thank you, Justin Brady, for the PR help. Thank you for my team, P Money, Aaron, for helping, with all the follow through that needed to be done. Thank you for the hardwood team for getting the hardwood done. Thank you for myself for running an awesome piece of software. And thank you, Roberto, for doing this podcast.
It's amazing.
Uh,
And then the first videos, what the hell,
Yeah.
man?
So I'll end with the Wall Street Journal. Nothing better than that. And maybe we'll have New York Times and some other stuff down the road. But please, we need $1 million. Otherwise, this show ends. So you don't want the show to end, okay, guys? We want this train
It's a
to
good
keep
show,
going.
man. Let's keep it going. It's a really good show. And we need you.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Take care. Bye.